What's going on, guys? This is Damien from the Lookout, and the Road to Nets series begins with the first installment, Road to Nets Red. Yeah, Nets and or Finals is just around the corner, and I know a lot of people still don't know what to play, what to expect. I hope that I can help you a bit with this series. And guys, this is gonna be awesome. And so dead serious about this that I've actually shaved, you can see. So, but before we begin, huge shout out to the Coffee Club, our lovely patrons. These are our $2 and up patrons. They buy us coffee. They keep this crazy content train going. And guys, thank you so much. If you wish to join the Coffee Club, link to our Patreon is in the description below. And I think that's about everything. Roll the video! As with all of our videos, let's start with the breakdown. It's time to get ready for Nets. Which decks to play, rogue options, tech cards and summary. That's what we're gonna go over. I'm gonna start with presenting some data and then we'll just go over a couple of decks and I'll show you a couple of tech cards. And yeah, let's do this. Let's go! Let's start by talking about red in the current meta. Do you even want to play red? Yes, red is in an amazing position. Red is in a phenomenal position right now, which is weird because it was awful for the majority of the year, but now it's actually pretty good. What does red have going for it? It has four things. First, it has the best aggro in the game. By far, uncontested the best aggro in the game. There are some decks which can come very close. Green Gohan, for example. Black SS4 Goku Zeno, for example, can also go very, very aggressive, but I think that red has consistently the best aggro at the moment with the highest variety of options. It has above average to high draw power. That means that above average is, let's say on average you draw 2 cards during your turn. Above average is you draw like 3, or you can draw during your opponent's turn as well. That will be considered above average. And high is when you draw like 3 to 4 cards consistently every single turn. And red has above average to high. It also has the unique ability to minus cards, which is the best form of removal in the game. And lastly, it has one of the best floodgates in the game, like insanely broken floodgate. However, it is locked behind BT23. So if you don't get BT23 on time, and in some regions it's gonna be quite difficult, you will not have access to this floodgate. You need to keep this in mind. Okay, let's start by checking out some leaders. We will start by going over some data for red leaders. Alright, here is some data. So here are the highest ranked red leaders across the last 2 metagames. So BT21, BT22. We're not counting BT20 because that was just, yeah. Anyway, these are tops and wins combined. It's not just topping and or winning. What we can see here, and I think that this data is relevant because there was no ban list at the start of BT22, so it's kind of everything existing in the same metagame, almost the same metagame. So we can see that ban is by far the best performing red deck in the game, followed by Cooler, who now got anniversary box support, Launch, Vegito BT2, and finally Jiren. Jiren topped twice. So some of them, for example Jiren, is in a bit of a lower number count because Jiren came out at the tail end of BT22 after anniversary box support. Cooler is also like somewhere there, but it also performed very well without the anniversary box support. So yeah, these are some of the main red decks that are on the top tables, that have been on the top tables for the last 2 metagames. Now let's talk about gatekeepers. Yeah, these 5 are the big bosses of the event. These are the best of the best in each color, like the tier 1 leaders. For red, it's Pan. Then we have UI Goku, the newest arrival. Then we have Gogeta. Gohan is for green. Yeah, it's a bit weird, but green is really in shambles. And Mexicabura is for black. And out of all of them, I think Mexicabura is by far the best one. But let's focus on red here. So we expect these to be the highest represented leaders from each color. Not only are they likely the best leaders in each color, they're probably going to be the highest represented ones as well. So the higher you go in the event, the more likely you will run into one of these 5. So for your deck to be viable, to be able to top the event, or at least get like top 32 for example, it needs to consistently be able to beat at least a few of them. If you can consistently beat at least, let's say, 2 of them, that might just be good enough for the deck to be considered viable and for you to get onto top tables. Let's say like top 32 or something. If you wish to get into top 16, you just play one of these, video over. But anyways, yeah, so this is the minimum criteria. Last thing before we take a look at various leaders, we need to talk about new arrivals. We have 2 new leaders from BT23. Now, the big thing about these 2 is that there's not gonna be a single BT23 event before the European finals, before European and Oceanian finals, and these are going to be the first ones. So we have absolutely no data for these 2. We don't have any data for them. However, we will be using findings from our testings and, let's say, our locals, because we're running BT23 illegal locals every Friday, to evaluate these leaders. So this part, take it with a grain of salt. This is just personal evaluation because we don't have actual data. And yeah, you might not even run into them if the product is delayed. But we need to mention them anyway. Alright now, so which leaders to play at Nets? We're breaking down leaders into 3 groups. Meta leaders, competitive leaders, and finally, rogue leaders. So meta are the cream of the crop. You can see panties here, so that's like the very best ones. Competitive are the second best choice. Like if you don't wish to run pan, for example, you probably very likely can't go wrong with any of these competitive leaders. They're like very, very, very close. And then you have rogue decks, and these are the ones which we consider viable rogue options. You know, it's not like red starter Vegeta from some ancient set. Like these are the things that actually have what it takes to help you top the event. Let's start with the meta leaders. Meta leaders, the expected best leaders in the Nets format. Let's start things off with Pen Reboot, the best red deck in the game. By far. Like Pen Reboot is absurd. So this has been the best red deck for several meta games now. It's been the deck which has single-handedly been carrying the entire color since Gogeta and single banned. What do you get with Pan? So you have above average draw. You can draw on both turns. So you don't draw a lot, but you can draw on both turns due to her auto effect. You have amazing removal, like amazing ability to minus your opponent's cards. You have very, very cheap plays. Nothing in this deck should cost more than like 2 energy. So like everything is dirt cheap here, and basically everything is accompanied with a card draw because of the first thing that you play a turn is accompanied with a card draw because of her ability. The boss monster is in the Z deck, so you basically have it in your hand the entire time. And finally the deck is very, very consistent Z charge. And now there's one more thing that makes you really consider Pan for Nets, and that is this thing. So here are your key cards. This thing, this Pan to the left, is the best red card in the game at the moment. I think it's far better even than the newest Floodgate. Like this is hands down the most busted red card in the entire format. And then you have the counterplay, Gohan, which if you don't have it, unfortunately, it's super expensive and it's gonna be given away as a participation prize, but you still can't play with it at the event because you're just gonna get it later, so it sucks a bit. But yeah, sure, don't play the deck if you don't have these 2 cards at least. And finally, your boss monster. Now these are your key cards, but let's talk about the big one, the newest anniversary box promo. This card here made the deck absurd. Just absurd. From tier 1 broken to absolutely absurd. So, on a power increase, which triggers naturally through your leader's auto, on each player's turn, it draws a card. Let me remind you, your leader also draws if it increases power above 20k, which it's gonna do. So you draw 2, and then you give a battle card minus 20 for the turn. Not 10, that would be balanced. Not 15, that would also arguably be balanced. Minus 20. You can kill most cards with this, except like boss monsters. You can kill a whole bunch of cards with this. Your leader triggers, and then by giving you the first battle, triggers this card by giving the first battle card played on each turn plus 5k. And it's super dangerous, so let's check out some combos with this thing. Here are some of the key combos with this card. So let's say your opponent plays a boss monster without barrier, or a secret rare, and you have this pan. So you play defeating the demon, the leader triggers, defeating the demon is now 25k, and then both of these trigger. Defeating the demon gives the card minus 20, and then Pain draws you a card and gives it another minus 20. So basically, for 1 energy with the counterplay, you get a 25k, draw 2 cards, blocker double striker, neg something by minus 40 for a single energy. Yeah, okay. And how do you make this happen? Basically, what you can do on your opponent's turn, another cool thing that you can do, is you can use these new gammas. Because for activate battle, 1 energy, you play them. And they draw you a card, and they give plus 10 to something, and then plus 5 to themselves. But if you have Pan, and you have your leader, you will have your leader, it's basically draw 3 cards for a single energy, minus 20 something, plus 10 to something else, plus 5 to gammas, and plus additional 5 to gammas because of the leader's ability. So you've played a 25k, you drew 3 cards, you killed something, and you gave plus 10 to something for a single energy. So yeah, I'm now done talking about Pan. Let's move on to the next meta leader. This one is a bold claim, because we don't have any data outside of small local events, but Future Gohan from BT23 is on pair with Pan, if not arguably stronger than Pan is. Like this thing, I would argue that Future Gohan is better than Pan. Like this deck is absurd. So what do you get with it? You get absurd draw power. You just draw 3 cards per turn, plus the natural draw 1. So you're basically drawing 4 each of your turns. That's the best draw that Red has at the moment. You also have the best Z energy generation in Red. Like you generate an absurd amount of Z energy. You have 2 hands, because your Z extra card is basically an additional hand that allows you to combo with things from under it. So you just put things under it to draw cards, and then you use them in combos to do combat tricks, to give your attackers keywords. For free, by the way, because of your leader's effect, you do this for free. No cards cost more than 1 energy, except the boss monster, that's like 2. And everything else is 1. Everything is a single energy. Basically everything draws as well, or minuses. So you either minus things or you draw, and if it's 1 card that draws, so then you just draw 5 this turn. Yeah. And it also has a 20k baseline Z leader, which is absurdly powerful if it's a red Saiyan, because then it can become 25k. So yeah, let's take a look at what makes this deck so good. What makes Future Gohan so good? Well, it's this, the extra card, the Destroyed West City. What it allows you to do is activate main, you place one card from your hand under it, and then you draw one. Pretty simple, right? You're like, okay, so I'm losing one from hand to draw an additional one. Like I'm semi-filtering, semi-cycling here. But you're not actually doing it. Because when you put these Trunkses under, or your Z-Leader under it, not Z-Leader, your Secretary under it, or your Boss Monster under it, but let's talk about Trunkses. Let's just focus on these. So when you put them under the Z extra card to draw, you can for free, because of your leader, you can for free use them in a combo to gain keyword skills. Yeah. How would you like to get Barrier? How would you like to get Critical? Double Strike maybe? Does Double Strike sound good? Yeah. For no investment, you gave up a card from hand, which you didn't really do, to draw one, and then for free you gave one of your attackers a keyword skill. Yeah, so basically +1 in hand, and then you did like a cool combat trick. Yeah, that's really, really strong once you get to play this deck. That's really, really strong. So yeah, these were the meta leaders. Let's move on to some other leaders. Now it's time to take a look at competitive leaders, the second best choice. Let's start with Red Androids. Yeah, this is the other newest archetype from BT23. I don't believe that it's as good as Gohan, but it's extremely aggressive. It's the most aggressive red deck in the game at the moment. It's very close to the level of Red Sin. The reason it's not is because it lacks the defenses that Red Sin had. Anyway, what do you get with androids? You get above average draw power. You draw from them, you draw from the field, you draw from cards that you play. So that's above average. You have extreme aggression early on. We're talking extreme pressure. Very, very early on. From your turn 2, you're just going off. There's no stopping you. You have multiple attackers. You have double strikers, you have guys which have critical, everything removes things, everything has a minus effect. Like, it's insane to fight this deck, it's really insane. And it has one thing that other super aggro decks don't have, it's actually stronger the longer you go, because once you hit turn 4 and it plays its boss monster, that's effectively 6 attacks for 2 energy. Yeah. It's really, really crazy. It has cheap and or free plays. I wrote some negatives here. I don't have these for every single archetype, but I have for this one. Android trait isn't the best. They don't get anything for being androids. They lack defenses. And finally, BT23 might be hard to get on time. There's only one SR minus the explosive dance for this archetype, but it might be difficult to get it on time, which is why I'm putting this one, which is one of the reasons I'm putting this one into competitive. Next on our list, Vegito BT2. So I know there are a lot of fans of this deck, so I just want to say, guys, just because it's in competitive and not meta defining, that doesn't make it any less powerful. Like, meta defining are absurdly broken leaders, just like absurdly broken. These are the second best choice. They're still miles ahead of everything else. So this has been one of the most consistently topping red decks this year, earlier in the metagame, even before Pan. Like, he hasn't topped that much as you have seen in the data, but it's, I think, the only other red deck, or like the third red deck, which had a lot, quote unquote, a lot of tops. I mean, everything had, but when you compare it to Pan, it's just absurd. So yeah, it did top a lot through this year, even from the days of Sin and Gogeta. So let's just go over what you get with this one. You get access to all colors, because it's a prismatic deck. You have huge keyword soup battle cards. We're talking about triple strike, double strike, barrier, deflect, blocker, everything on the planet. These guys have everything on the planet. You have barrier removal on the Z leader, which is stupid, which is really stupid, because every turn he can just remove a barrier card from the field, which is way, way too strong. in a color which suffers from the lack of barrier removal. So this is a huge one. It has access to counter in red. It plays almighty resistance, and it can just use it to counter your negates and make sure the damage connects. That's crazy. It has explosive dance, which works in it as well, and it works pretty well in it, considering that a lot of these higher end Vegetos, you can get some of them which are around the same power range, so you don't need to charge too much Z energy to throw away for explosive dance. Not all decks can pull that off, and it has a very strong archetype SER, the blue-yellow Vegeto. So yeah, Vegeto. The last one on our list is Cooler Mill. So Cooler Mill has actually topped more than Vegeto, mostly because of the anniversary box support, but this one has also been consistently topping like crazy throughout the year. Like there's always been like at least one of these guys every 2 events. I'm sorry if you're hearing sounds my cat is playing. Anyway, what do you get with Cooler? Well, it's a mill deck. So first off, what you get a decent draw. The draw isn't anything special in Cooler. Like it's not bad, it's just decent, it's okay. You have alternative win con in mill, and that's very unique to red. So you're basically fighting your opponent by milling them, and in today's metagame every single deck draws like crazy, so mill is even a more viable option. And mill by its nature is, as the next point says, fairly uninteractive. So your game plan is basically mill your opponent by minusing his cards. There is battle cards specifically. There's not a lot that they can do to interact with this, so they just need to kill you before you mill them. It's a fairly uninteractive game plan. It has tons and tons of removal. It has so many removal, and it has a lot of removal which ignores barrier, which is something that red struggles with. It has access to blue and red-blue cards, which is also huge, and to top that off, it has a really good Z leader as well. So yeah, Cooler Mill is a very, very, very viable option for Nats. Last but not the least, we have rogue decks. These are competitive but unorthodox choices. Let's start with my personal favorite, the strongest fighter in Dragon Ball franchise, the strongest fighter in the multiverse, canonically, Jiren. Yes, the dickhead nipple man of Universe 11 himself, the sentient thumb, is here to beat the crap out of your opponents. And yeah, it's a fairly explosive unison-centric aggro deck. However, there's an issue, and you can probably already see it here. What do you get with Jiren? You get exceptional draw. Like anyone who has been playing Jiren after the anniversary box came out can vouch that you can draw almost your entire deck in like 4 turns, 5 max. You're almost out of cards completely, but it's conditional. You need to have your dispo out, and it's better when you have a unison out. And you need to evolve. You can aggro with big guys. That's the only thing that you can actually do consistently. You have very good removal in form of minusing. You have a boss monster that just minuses ignoring barrier, but again it's conditional. You need to have things in play to actually do these things. You have burn with the unison when it hits 7 markers, but it's also conditional. You need to hit 7 markers. You have huge leader swings, but it's also conditional because you need to evolve enough times for Jiren to become huge. And to top all of that off, you highly depend on seeing your unison in the first 2 turns. If you don't see Topo in the first 2 turns, you fold. You just lost the game. There's no coming back from that. So yeah, Jiren is high risk, high reward, in a way that the high risk is you basically praying that in a 50 plus card deck you will hit your unison turn 1 every single game. If you can do that, you're gonna probably win, because this thing is extremely explosive and it has massive attackers. So yeah, if you feel like you wish to gamble with your Nets placing, like I will personally, I'm gonna be playing this deck, then Jiren is probably the deck for you. If you wish something more consistent in its power, then you might wish to look at some other options. Launch, yes, launch. So it's a red-blue combo-centric, all-around strong toolbox deck. Yeah, it's a mouthful. It's a red leader, but you only run her as red-blue. There was a red-green version way back in the past. Now it's just red-blue. And you're basically running a package similar to Cooler Mill, but you're also relying a lot on red generic cards, and red has a lot of very good generic cards at the moment. So what do you get with launch? You get great draw power. Not like absurd draw power, but still good. For red, it's still very, very good. You get access to blue and red-blue cards because you're running basically Cooler Mill. You get lots of Z energy because you combo like crazy in this deck. You get lots of removal because everything minuses in this deck if you build it like this. Because the launch is fragile, she's only 10k and you need all the protection that you can get. So you're just arrivaling things and minusing or using pan. Yes, pan again, just to minus cards and draw extra. The minuses, however, Earthling trait isn't the best. You don't get anything by being an Earthling. You get more just by being a Saiyan, for example. And the reason why it's in Rogue is because it's extremely pilot skill dependent deck. It's extremely pilot skill dependent deck. If you don't know literally everything about this deck, you're gonna fold at the event. Like this deck, every matchup is complicated. Every matchup is hard. And you really need to know exactly what you're doing at every point in the game. It's very intensive to play, especially for like 10 rounds. So if you're someone whose this deck is the main deck and you have topped and or won events with it in the past and you've played it like hundreds of times enough to know it in your sleep, it's the best deck at the event. It's by far the best deck at the event. But there's such an extreme minority of people who can actually play launch like that. So if you're one of those people, definitely take launch. Definitely. If you're not confident that you can learn launch on that level by the time the finals roll around, then maybe you should try out something else. The last rogue deck is Cell Max. I really like Cell Max, so I wanted to put it here. It's a removal focused red good stuff deck with a very good draw. So the draw is above average in a way that you draw on your opponent's turn as well. So I think you still draw like 2 cards, maybe 3, depending on what you're playing, but you can draw on either player's turn. So it's above average. You get access to blue and red-blue cards if you build red-blue Cell. There are a lot of ways to build Cell. Some players prefer the mono red version. I have heard that there is a red-yellow version somewhere, and there's also like the red-blue version. It has all of the removal ever. It's removal city the deck. Like everything in this deck connects and removes things, and then you just draw. Nothing survives on the field unless it has barriers, so it just evaporates everything. A huge thing that it has, especially if you're running a red-blue version, is that it has superhero in the character name. Superhero in the character name is amazing. It's absolutely amazing, especially in a deck like in a slower control-ish deck like this, where you gain access to Blue Gohan. And Blue Gohan is one of the best floodgates in the game. So yeah, Cell can use Blue Gohan because Cell has superhero in his character name. So it has that going for him. However, he struggles with barrier like Red does. It's just a thing that Red struggles with, mostly for balance purposes. And I got to say, for everything that the deck does, it's still the weakest choice on the list. I think that any other deck that I have listed, except maybe for launch, because launch you really need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, it's the weakest deck here. I think all of them are stronger than Cell. But as the last rogue option, here it is, Cell Max. Now let's talk about some tech options. It's time to get your sideboard ready for the event. Let's start with Disruption. Okay, so we have two big bads. That's blue and yellow. Blue is our natural opposite. Like, blue is stronger than red, has a favorable matchup against red. So to ruin blue as a color, we're running Reddits, Pilaf and Mai. A lot of lists are dropping Reddits, but Pilaf is a staple. Pilaf you just have to have this card, and Mai a staple as well. So you run these two Reddits, maybe. Then for yellow likes to floodgate us, it likes to play its little counters. So we're running Beerus Ball and we're running King Vegeta Hidden Ambitions. Both of these can punish yellow for using its negates, because we want to keep swinging at them. We just want to keep on the pressure, and these two cards really help us out achieve that. Now that we have talked about punishing our opponent for using his defensive options, let's take a look at our defensive options. Let's take a look at our defenses. So we have some floodgates here. I'm not gonna talk about like testing the opposition. Every single deck runs it anyway. So we have King Vegeta's Imposing Presence, but you need to be a Red Saiyan. So that's a huge thing that you're getting if you're Red Saiyan. You have Explosive Dance, which is currently the best floodgate in red. You have Topo, which is the former best floodgate in red. And finally, if you don't get Explosive Dance on time, and if you wish to fight like certain matchups, you have Violent Rays. Like, it's the worst option, but it's an option which you can use. And finally, I wish to talk about stopping the Victory Strike Secret Rare from U7 yellow. Run Flight of the Great Eagle, because you can't affect the card with your extra cards, but this card gives your leader plus 100,000 power, so it helps you survive the Victory Strike attack. So yeah, I think those are all of our defensive options. Now let's just move on to the summary. Before we end the video, let's quickly jump into the summary. So red is an amazing choice for the finals. There's a fairly good number of decks to play. We have listed like 8 of them? About 8 of them. So there is a lot of variety. There are a lot of options for you if you wish to play red at finals. Battle card aggro might not be the best now, especially into yellow and blue, because they have Nimbus and Defending Friends. Defending Friends is not as scary as Nimbus, but Nimbus can really shut you down. But however, a positive thing is that red can compensate a lot in the early game pressure and potential fast kills. You're not gonna get Nimbus turn 2. You're definitely not getting Nimbus turn 2 against a lot of matchups. So you can capitalize with some aggro decks. You can actually capitalize on turns 1, 2 and 3 to just secure a fast kill. The longer you go against some more control-ish decks, the more difficult it is to beat them, but because of floodgates like this. Because yeah, battle card aggro not in the best position at the moment. However, you can compensate. And finally, your best floodgate and 2 decks are locked behind BT23 allocations, so you might not get them in time for your event. I'm talking about Explosive Dance as the best floodgate, Future Gohan, which is a tier 1 deck, and Red Androids. So if you're sure that your store won't get these on time, and Explosive Dance will be really difficult to get because everyone wants that card, maybe you should look at some other options in red. And yeah, I think that's about everything. That's it for the video. Let me know in the comments below, will you be playing red at Nats? Is red the color that you will be taking to the biggest event of the year? And if so, which decks are you considering taking? So is it one of the ones from the meta? list, or is it like one of the competitive, maybe a rogue option, maybe something I've missed in this video? Let me know in the comments. I look forward to reading them. I read all of your comments. I try to respond to everything. I'll try to do that faster. And I really, really love our little community. We have the best community in the world. And guys, by the way, while you're still here, hit those like and subscribe buttons. Help us get to 4K subs. And when we get there, I'm gonna give away a booster box. This has been Damien from The Lookout, and I'll see all of you in the next video.